Hello everybody, it's Mark Bloomhard with Hustle and Grit, and CEO and founder of Bootstrap & Co Creative Studios. And what I want to talk about today is the dark secrets of stocks, and the dark secrets that they actually don't teach you in school and MBA. I've got an MBA in corporate finance. I've taught a lot of MBA finance classes, and I've never seen this in any curriculum. It's pretty disturbing, actually, if you think about it, and it kind of opens up the whole world of stocks, and it kind of explains why everything's happening the way it's happening. So if you can see some of these really, really innovative companies and their stocks aren't performing so well, the stocks is kind of like the beginning of a slippery slope. Once the stocks start going down and investors start coming out, you got to bring that thing back around. If you can't bring your stock performance back around, then it's kind of like, people are going to be jumping off of the burning ship, if you will. So I want to talk about why many stocks don't perform in creative industries. So a little bit of background, my degree, my PhD is actually in leading highly innovative and branded organizations. So one of the things that people don't really understand, and once you get this, it becomes really interesting, is that how stock prices and the appetite of investors in the stock market is actually determined. So let's say, for example, you've got a company. Let's say I'm leading a company and I'm doing the absolute best I can. I've got, let's say, a performance of 10 years. I'm giving it all I can, and what happens is a stock analyst will look at the trajectory of the revenue and the profitability, absolutely everything, and they'll strike a trajectory, right? So they'll say, okay, this is where the stock is going. Now, these people are as smart as you and I, right? Actually, probably even smarter. So they're not going to look at a snapshot of today and say, okay, the stock is worth $10, right? They're going to look at this trajectory and they're going to say, okay, in 5 years, that stock is worth, and I'm kind of dumbing it down, right? But that stock is going to go up, so it's not going to be worth $10 anymore. That stock is going to be worth $100. So we kind of expect this line to continue, right? This profitability, the revenue is based off of revenue, operational costs, and everything. So if we're here, we kind of expect it to grow. So as an investor, we want this growth, and so we're willing to invest in your stock. So the analyst is going to look at where you are, where you're going to be in the future, and they're going to let that determine what the stock price is going to be. Hopefully that makes sense, right? Here's where the problem is. Let's say I'm a CEO of this company and I'm just cooking with gas. I'm giving all I've got, right? We've got some pretty big wins. We had some innovative products hit the market. The market was ready for those innovative products, and they purchased the products, right? So I've got this really nice, healthy growth plan that everybody's looking at, and I'm the poster child, right? But the problem is, it's really, really difficult to actually exceed those expectations. Now, if I continued that, then I would hit the analyst's goals, right? There's no big wow with that because they've struck a price at that. Say, okay, we're hoping to hit, this company would hit this valuation. That makes sense. In order to increase my prices, I actually have to increase. So there needs to be an exponential growth on a growth that I'm doing the best I can. So if I'm kind of clicking away, giving all I've got, the way to exceed the investors' expectations is to inject something and the stock starts growing exponentially. Now, does it happen? It happens all the time, folks. But it's extremely difficult because there's a lot of people out there that are really smart. There's a lot of companies that are producing great work. There's a lot of competition. So in order to increase exponentially, you've got to beat the competition exponentially, if that makes any sense, okay? So what happens is so many times these companies are clicking away and they're giving absolutely all they've got, and they can't do it. So if you look at, for example, GoPro, right? GoPro was completely sliding downhill, but their sales were going up. You're like, whoa, what happened? Their sales are going up. They're entering the Pacific Rim, the Chinese market. Their sales are actually going up, but their stock market is a complete, free fall. It's because the stock markets or the analysts knew that they're going to China. They knew that they were entering that market, and they expected the increased sales. But what they really wanted was not just increased sales, but more products to hit the market. So I've got 4 kids and pretty much all of them are photography. I can't remember the last time one of them said, hey, I want to get the newest version of a GoPro camera. Now this is a perfect example of what's happening. They've given cameras, and they've made advancements on those cameras, and they've made this really, really nice, healthy growth pattern according to sales. But they have a hard time in exponentially growing that because they haven't released new products on the market. This is a perfect example. If you were the CEO of GoPro, what would you do? What product would you release to the market? And so here's the dark secret of capitalism. Now, I'm for capitalism, don't get me wrong, but here's the dark secret of investors in stocks. In order to break that cycle and interject exponential growth, 3 things need to happen. Now, this is a conversation, so I challenge you. Tell me if I'm wrong. There's only 3 things that you can do as a CEO. The first thing, innovate. Bring new products to the market. Not only new products to the market, but new products to the market that will sell. And that's more difficult than it sounds. So you've got to figure out what products. You can't just throw out 1,000 products and hope one wins. You've got to be like Steve Jobs. You've got to understand your market, and you've got to release a product that your market will purchase. And it's extremely difficult because they've been trying their darndest up to this point. So innovation. If you can't innovate, then you're stuck. And if you think that sounds like an easy thing to do, it's because you have no experience doing it. It's extremely difficult. It is one of the most unbelievably difficult things to do, and that's why everybody knows Steve Jobs' name. And that's why it's very difficult to find somebody to replace Steve Jobs. He had the ability to innovate. So if you can't innovate and you're having a hard time finding products that you can produce that your market will need, then you're not innovating. So the first one's out. Then the second way to beat the stockholders' expectation is to increase profitability. Think about that. Not just sales, but profitability. So how do you increase profitability? Well, many times the leadership then will start looking at what costs the company a lot of money. They'll look and say, okay, we're going to cut down this manufacturing process. We're going to make our restaurants a little bit cheaper. And our basic expense is salary. We're going to lay off some people. So if I've got layoffs and I start reducing my operational expenses, my profitability will go up. And because my profitability will go up, then I'll show some short-term gains. But the problem is they're short-term. The problem is that when you give the short-term gains, what happens to the fundamentals of the company? Who have you laid off? What about the impact on the culture of the organization? They're like, hey, we're going through a layoff. We're not that strong. We're not as strong as we used to be. We're not in the glory days. We're actually laying people off. It's an extremely painful process. So if they can't innovate and you can't reduce operational cost, then you only literally have one more thing to do. And that's commit fraud. And this is what I'm asking, like, is there a fourth thing? So if you can't innovate, and please don't say, I innovate and make it sound easy, right? Because it's extremely difficult. And you can't reduce operational expenses, then what's the third thing? And that's why it's so tempting when you see these CEOs and they're raising prices on a product or they're committing fraud or whatever it is. It's an easy trap. I get it. I'm not excusing them. I'm not telling them it's the right thing to do. I get it because their entire career, their legacy, their entire, like many times their entire income, like 90% of their income, is contingent on beating or exceeding the shareholders' expectations. And that their entire being is that. So you can imagine that they're like, okay, let's lift and shift. Let's do something here until this new product gets released, blah, 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 blah. So a lot of what I'm talking about, the failures in leadership at a very, very high level is actually coming down to a lot of brand leadership. The inability to understand your brand. And that understand your brand means that you understand your consumer group and the products that you're releasing to them. That basically is your brand. The emotional connection to that product that you're releasing to the group that's your biggest fan base. That's your brand. Now, if you have a great understanding of that, you've got a chance of innovating. If you don't have an understanding of that, you might be innovating. You might be releasing products to the world, but those products are just kind of fizzling out. And that's the danger of running as a CEO. And that's why, to be honest with you, so many CEOs get paid so much money, because there is somebody that has to look at it and say, I'm going to do that product. And this happens all the time, folks. Lee Iacocca, for example, he was the chairman of the Chrysler Corporation. Back in the day, everybody was saying, minivan, we tried it. Let's not do the minivan. And against all common sense of all the research, he's like, nope, America's ready for a minivan. Cranked out a minivan, the Chrysler minivan. He was the first one on the market because he defied basically all common sense, if you will. And it was the one product that, basically saved the Chrysler Corporation. And for a long time, it commanded 52% of the minivan market. So you see these things all the time. It's not just the Steve Jobs. It's not just the Richard Bransons. You see this all the time, but they're few and far between. You have to look very, very closely for this. So it can be done, but it takes that one person to understand their group and understand their market and understanding their products, like literally better than anybody else. And that's the pressure that CEOs have on them, if that makes any sense. So if you're listening to this, if you want to, hopefully this, creates a lot of stir. Hopefully this starts a conversation. If you think of something more than the 3 elements to a stock report, I would love to hear about it. If you have nothing else, have a great week, and talk to you soon.